You are now listening to 1-900 Old Ladies, The Lost Art of Making Lefse, written by Ellie Starr, narrated by the author. Post-production by Pinto Media. Chapter 8. Then you wrap everything up good and tight and put it back in the icebox until you're ready to make the dough. Sigrid Sivertsen. When William Knutson dropped off Ellen Sivertsen's mail on Tuesday, November 16th, he noticed that she had not fetched the mail from the previous day. He noted this as something of an anomaly. It wasn't like Ellen to forget about the mail. But he failed to mention this concern, fearing he would be perceived as a busybody. That day, he simply proceeded to the next mailbox on his scheduled route. But when William Knutson dropped off Ellen's mail on Wednesday, November 17th, not only did he observe that Ellen had not picked up her mail for the previous 2 days, his level of concern had peaked to the point where he chose to deviate from his scheduled route, drive up to Ellen's house, and check in on her. He parked his mail truck at the top of the driveway and left his engine running. There didn't seem to be a soul around the farmhouse. Perhaps Ellen gave up and left town. He approached the front window, which was obscured from the inside by numerous blankets Ellen had suspended inside 2 weeks earlier. He tried to peer in several windows, but he couldn't see inside. He noticed that there was a stock pot filled with frozen and riced potatoes in the yard. A carton of milk also sat in the snow, frozen into one massive block of cold, white ice. He opened the storm door and knocked on the front door. "Miss Ellie? It's William Knutson. Just checking to see if you're okay." There wasn't any answer. Perhaps she did leave for warmer climates and failed to inform anyone in the town. He wouldn't have blamed her. He knocked again. "Miss Ellie? Are you there?" Boldly, he tried the latch. The door opened. He hesitated, and then he poked his nose inside the door, now cracked open. "Miss Ellie?" There was no answer. Why would she leave town and leave the door unlocked? He would have to investigate. He politely kicked the snow off his boots and entered Ellen's kitchen. The kitchen was deserted, and Ellen had suspended a rope in the threshold between the kitchen and living area, using it to hang a bunch of blankets. William pushed aside the blankets to discover Ellie, nearly frozen and unconscious, sitting in her wing chair and huddled under a multitude of quilts. The fire to her pot-bellied stove was completely cold, and she seemed to have run out of firewood. The tarnished silver cobra head of Stanley's cane sat on top of the cold stove. It looked as if she had sawed off the wooden stick to fuel her fire. "Oh, good Lord!" William cried. He patted Ellen's chin lightly to get her to respond. "Oh, geez, I'm going to have to get some help here." William tried to use Ellen's kitchen phone, only to realize there was no dial tone. Instead, he enlisted the help of Sheriff Baker using his two-way radio. He then tried to revive and warm poor Ellen while he waited for help. Sheriff Baker arrived a few minutes later in his squad car. "Miss Sivertsen? Say something. Can you wake up?" At first, Ellen was unresponsive. Then she opened her eyes and sleepily gazed up at William Knutson. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm William Knutson, Miss Ellie. Sheriff and I are going to get you to the hospital now." The sheriff and William each wrapped one of Ellen's arms around their necks and lifted her up. Confused, she smiled at the sheriff and stated weakly, "Oh, Mr. Baker, your boy Paul is so sweet. He's really one of my best students. He's just so darn polite." Ellen's rescuers carried her out to the sheriff's squad car while she continued to brag about her favorite student, feebly unaware that her star pupil had now grown up to be the town sheriff. William glared at Paul disgustedly. Poor thing doesn't even know where she is, he commented. Stanley just left her here for dead. Is it any wonder she's lost it now? The two men loaded Ellen into the back seat of the squad car, covering her in additional blankets to warm her. William, go down to her mailbox and get all her mail. Then meet me at the hospital, the sheriff commanded. But sheriff, mail tampering's a federal offense, William warned. I know the law, William. Just do what I ask. Then Paul Baker got in his squad car and drove Miss Sievertson to the hospital. Miss Ellie? Doris Baker stood over Ellen as she lay in her hospital bed. Ellen drowsily opened her eyes and recognized Doris. Sheriff Paul also stood behind his wife. Oh, my goodness, where am I? Ellen inquired. You gave us quite a scare there now, Miss Sievertson. You're at the hospital, Miss Ellie, Doris added. Hospital? Yes, Miss Ellie. Paul brought you here. Well, really, it was William Knutson who found you, Miss Sievertson. He saved your life. I just brought you here, don't you know, Paul said modestly. Oh, dear, I'm sorry to be such a bother. Miss Ellie, why didn't you tell us they turned off your power? We would have been glad to help you out, Doris inquired. I was fine, dear. You didn't need to worry about me. Nonsense, Paul scolded. We'll get your power turned back on and your phone too. Doc says you'll need to be here a few more days till you get your strength up. Then you can go home. You just rest, Miss Ellie. Call us if you need anything. Doris gently kissed Ellen on the forehead. When Margie Carter's husband passed away 3 weeks earlier, Margie understood that John had sunk their entire savings into a life insurance annuity funded by an offshore investment account in the Turks and Caicos Islands. The agent who sold him the annuity assured John that, because the investment account was offshore, it would accumulate tax-free, thereby maximizing their investment and potential profits. John was a cute and lovable guy, but he was a horrible businessman, mostly due to the fact that he was so gullible. He had been repeatedly burned during his many failed business endeavors. Unfortunately, he quickly forgot the valuable lessons he should have wisely gleaned from these grave errors of judgment. He was naively blinded by the overabundance and charm of these South Florida conmen who were always quick to deceive him out of whatever hard-earned cash he and Margie had managed to save. John Carter always expected the best out of people, even though he usually saw them at their worst. 3 days after John passed away, Margie phoned Dan Sanders, John's life insurance agent, notifying him that her husband had died. Dan expressed his condolences and informed Margie that John's life insurance annuity should pay out quickly as soon as she brought John's death certificate to his office. When Margie acquired John's death certificate, she called Dan's office, which was located in a ritzy Sebring hotel. She left a message informing him that she would be by in the morning to show him the death certificate and pick up her check. The following morning, Margie reported to Dan's office with the promised documentation, only to discover that the door to his former office was now locked. Not only was Dan not in the office, he didn't leave a forwarding address or number. When she pounded on his office door and looked inside, she noticed that all his office furniture was gone. Holy crap, where is this guy? She asked herself. Dumbfounded, she walked down to the lobby, hoping to quiz the hotel concierge. Hey, she asked, can you tell me where Dan Sanders is? The concierge hesitated. Well, ma'am, he's moved out. What do you mean he's moved out? I just talked to him on the phone last week. I'm pretty sure he left the country. What? You gotta be friggin' kidding me. I believe he's moved to the Turks and Caicos Islands. Margie was livid at the realization that John had, once again, been swindled. Enraged, she marched behind the concierge counter. She grabbed the desk clerk by the necktie and twisted it violently with her left hand. She pulled his face 4 inches from her own and lifted her brow in her customary threatening manner. But she spoke with a monotone level of unsettling calm as she grabbed a pair of scissors off the desk with her right hand. You listen here, because I'm only going to tell you this once. And if you don't tell me what I want to hear, I'm going to slice off your testicles with this very sharp pair of scissors. Now, where the hell is Dan Sanders? The concierge started to tremble and held up his hands in surrender. Look, ma'am, I'm sorry. All I know is he left the country. He cleared out his stuff, and he didn't leave a forwarding address. Please don't hurt me, lady. I'm just a desk clerk. Shocked, Margie put down the scissors and started to bawl. Oh my God, I'm so screwed. Sorry, ma'am. I guess he split when he realized he was going to have to ante up. He was bound to leave the country if he didn't wind up dead first. He took a lot of rich and powerful people for a ride, even a couple of well-educated doctors who should have known better. We're not rich. That was everything we had. My bastard of a dead husband croaked on me and left me with nothing. This was all we had. This and a bunch of shredded up boards, which used to be a house and homestead. Margie was now blubbering. Look, ma'am, I'm really sorry. The concierge tried to console Margie, who sat perched on the reception desk. She grabbed up handfuls of Kleenex as she snorted into them. He tried to reassure her by placing his hand on her shoulder, but he was cautious about getting too close because he was still a little afraid she might become violent again. You just don't know what it's like. This has been a really bad year for me. Margie choked on her words, then pitifully and loudly blew her nose again. I know it's not your fault, the concierge added sympathetically, but, well, honestly, ma'am, didn't it occur to you that the guy might be a little shady when he was running his office out of a hotel? Embarrassed by the fact that her dead husband had been swindled of their life savings, Margie Sievertson Carter holed herself up in her Wauchula trailer house for an entire week. During that week, she rarely left the trailer, and she refused to talk to anyone. Most of all, she wanted to avoid her jealous sister Inga, who would gladly have poured even more salt into her already painful and gaping wounds of grief. If word got out that Margie and John had been duped by another South Florida con man, Inga would most certainly broadcast her unsolicited I told you so's to the rest of the Sievertson family. She spent most of her time in her trailer, but Margie occasionally stepped out to take short trips to the Circle K and grab some smokes. She never smoked before John died, but she decided that, since she was destined to live the rest of her life alone and in poverty in some godforsaken trailer park, she was going to do whatever she could to curtail the agony of living. Not only did she suddenly pick up the smoking habit, she started smoking Pall Mall unfiltered cigarettes with the hope that she would develop lung cancer sooner and die as quickly as humanly possible. Ellie was the one friend and family member that Margie felt she might have been able to confide in. Unfortunately for them both, Ellen's phone had been cut off a few days after John's death. Margie believed that Ellen was actually in worse shape than she was. Not only had her husband left her broke and starving, but Ellen didn't even like her husband. At least Margie had happy memories of living with John. Distraught, Margie wrote a long letter to Ellen, confiding in her the fact that, like Ellen, she was also broke and alone. She missed John, and she missed her sister, too. She wished that she and Ellen could be miserable together and comfort one another. Or at the very least, she wished Ellen could get her phone turned back on so they could talk about it. When they were young girls, Marge and Ellen talked together a great deal. Ellen was soft-spoken like father. Even though she was grandmother's favorite grandchild, Ellen was not ostentatious like Inga was. Margie never felt as though she was being judged by Ellen, only accepted by her as a beloved friend and sister. Margie always felt the need to protect Ellen, who was painfully shy and overly sensitive to anyone's plight but her own. As she thought about Ellen's current predicament, Margie wished that she had the fortitude to have done Stanley Sr. in years ago when he first married Ellen. Ellen would have been so much better off if Robert had lived. Margie had just returned from the Circle K with a pack of smokes and some lottery tickets. Lisa and Rachel Myers, who lived 2 trailers down, were playing Barbies on Margie's doorstep. The girls were 4 and 5, respectively. They both had long, dark hair, which their mother kept tied into tangled ponytails and seldom brushed. They were slightly plump, but they were also adorable and played on Margie's stoop quite often. They liked Margie, who often invited them in for snacks and probably spent more time with them than their own mother did. "Where's your mom?" Margie asked the girls. "She's watching Oprah," Rachel answered. "You guys want to come in and watch cartoons with me?" Margie inquired. The sisters jumped up excitedly. "Sure!" Margie's trailer park did have cable TV access. Like most little kids, Lisa and Rachel often enjoyed watching Nickelodeon cartoons. Margie didn't seem to mind frying up an occasional hot dog meal for the girls and letting them hang at her place once in a while. She often wished that her grandchildren lived closer to her so that she could spend more grandma time with them. But her 2 little neighbors were charming substitutes. Right now, she just needed their company. They seemed oblivious to grown-up problems and issues, and Margie craved a temporary respite from her own adult misery. "Girls, come here." Margie took Rachel and Lisa into her bedroom and opened her closet door. "You guys want to play dress up?" The girls were ecstatic. Margie salvaged several hats, dresses, and several pairs of high heels after the hurricane, but not much else of real value. Most of her wild stuff was pink, which Lisa and Rachel also loved. She grabbed a bright pink feather boa and wrapped it around Lisa's neck. "Well there, aren't you pretty?" she complimented. Lisa stood, modeling her gorgeous boa in the floor mirror as the kitchen wall phone rang. "I'll get it," Rachel volunteered. "If it's a telemarketer, tell him I'm poor," Margie joked. Rachel answered the phone while Margie grabbed a large, oversized straw hat off her closet shelf and placed it on little Lisa's head. "There," she said. "You look just like Princess Diana. Well, with that straw hat, maybe her overpriced gardener." Rachel held the phone out at arm's distance as she called to Margie from the kitchen. "It's for you, Mrs. Carter." "Who is it?" Margie yelled back. "Some sheriff guy," she answered. "From Dakota."